On today's show, we are very, very lucky to have for our inaugural episode of the Sens Spotlight podcast, the one and only Ian Mendes, the VP of Communications for the Ottawa Senators. Many of you guys know him from, covering the Sens for Sportsnet and TSN, and Ian's been so great to me. So really excited to have him as my first guest on the show, and excited to get started with Ian. Sammy, hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts the speed, gets a shot away, scores! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
First, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Betway. Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offers only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer available in Ontario. Must be 18 plus. Please play responsibly. Welcome to the first episode of the Sens Spotlight podcast, brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. I am so excited to start this podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun talking all things Ottawa Senators. Before we get started, because many of you know, I am the caregiver or I am taking over for, the late, great Shawn Simpson. And I just wanted to say something about him. Shawn, or Simmer, as most of you would know, brought the utmost analysis fused with humor and fun. And he always had great tweets as well. And just such an infectious smile and laugh. And, I was never fortunate enough to know or meet Simmer, but we connected many times online, and he'd always be so good to me. And, I just think it's great. It's not great, but we're really going to think about Simmer on this podcast. We have something as a tribute to him, as a segment that you guys will see later on, and we're just, our hearts are with Simmer and thinking about him for today's show and for the remainder of the show as well. So just think about Simmer and paying our respects. I am really, really excited to be joined by the VP of Senators Communications, Ian Mendes. Thanks so much for taking the time and being on our first guest of this first show. I really, really appreciate it. It's kind of cool, full circle moment for me, just with how much you've helped me out in my career. And I was thinking about 3 years ago, you came on my little dinky podcast on Zoom and kind of helped me out. So it's really cool to have you on, and thanks again for doing this.
Okay. Well, every time you launch something new, I guess I got to be your first guest.
Yeah, exactly. So when the Sens launch a new arena, you have to be my first guest as well. I need to be the first guest of the arena.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess, Ian, what's it been like for you? Like, it's been almost a year on the job.
Yeah.
Like, what's been kind of the most surprising moment for you, just kind of in the whirlwind of a year, kind of turning from a journalist into a PR guru?
You know what? I don't know that there's any one moment, Alex, that has been surprising. I think what's been surprising, and I knew that this would happen, and I say this all the time, it's the number of meetings that I'm in now is wild. And so many times reporters like yourself, you'll reach out to me, or other people will reach out to me like, hey, do you have 5 minutes to chat? Can I get you on this? I'm like, you should see my calendar. It is filled with meetings from about 9 a.m. till noon every day. I get a lunch break, and then it's 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock, and it feels like, meeting after meeting. So that's probably been the biggest adjustment, because when you go from where I was with The Athletic, I was by myself in the market. I was a lone wolf, basically not a freelancer, but I worked on a team, but I was the only one really in Ottawa. So I didn't have an office. I just kind of did I just wrote whenever I needed to write, and that was it. I wasn't beholden to meetings. I didn't have to be at an office. And here it's like, man, you're really living a 9 to 5 during the week, 9 to 5, but obviously we work games and weekends and all that. But that's been the biggest sort of adjustment for sure, is just the amount of time in an office versus where I was before, having never been step foot inside an office.
Does it feel weird? I was just thinking about this. Like, if I was on the PR side, is it weird for you to have been a journalist for so long and trying to ask tough questions, and then now you're in a meeting with like Brady Tkachuk or Steve Staios, and you're like, okay, this is what they're going to ask. Try to evade it as best as possible. Like, is that weird for you, or has it become you've gone full dark side?
Yeah, I've gone full dark side for sure. No, I think where it helps is when, and we certainly don't. Every time Brady meets with you guys, we don't give them a full prep list unless there's something that we think is a hot button issue. And I would say it's not like we try and, like, especially with like a guy like Steve Staios. I'll give you a great example. Steve Staios, we will run him through. We'll peel back the curtain here. We'll run him through what we think, when there's going to be a press conference. I think most PR teams do this with their general manager or their coaches. Like, hey, here's the questions we think you're going to get. And with Steve, what you see on the podium is what you get. Like that's him. Like, we don't have to coach him for anything because he is so good at delivering a message, not being – I don't think, like, Alex, you tell me, like, and I go back to I basically covered a season of Steve Staios when he was the general manager and president, and now he's kind of been on the job for 2 years. Has there even been one soundbite that you can think of that, like, you sort of jumped on and said, aha, like there's the funny soundbite or the
on the 8th day?
No, yeah, exactly. Like anything.
No.
Like that, nothing, right? Like nothing controversial, nothing that's become. I almost look at it and you say, like, if it turns into a meme, right? He's never delivered that, and that's a testament to his communication skills. So it's not like we've come on this side of the fence and we're like actively feeling like we're shaping the message with our general manager, because the general manager is so good at doing it. And same with Travis Green, he is really good, and I think that's where he came from a really tough, I would say, I'd say Vancouver, you could make an argument. I'm not saying it's definitive. I think you can make an argument is the toughest media market in the NHL. It is a grind, it puts you in a blender. You're under a microscope, whatever analogy you want to use. And so when you come to this market, I think you see a little bit of a difference between what he probably experienced there and what he experiences here in Ottawa.
Maybe moving forward a little bit just with like the team itself. Obviously, I know when you were a journalist, you always spoke to like, I want to speak for the fans to the fans. And now you kind of are, in a sense, like that's your whole goal in a sense for comms. Obviously, we won't go into the Eugene Melnyk era too much because it's a new one with Michael Andlauer and Steve Staios, as you mentioned. But I'm curious for you, like, how are you trying as a PR department and as a team to kind of maybe bring back fans? And obviously last year was a success, making the playoffs, playing the Leafs, making it a, almost fully, Senators fan building at the CTC. But what are you guys trying to do to kind of reconnect it? Because I know when I was a fan, like, I didn't have that same affinity as I did for the Ottawa Senators when I was, 10 years old watching you on TV. And so it's a little shot there, but
just had to throw that in, that you were a kid watching me on TV back in the day. No, and I think, when I talk to a lot of people who say like, oh, Ian, I used to grow up watching you on TV. One of the things that they used to love was I used to host a show called Molson Senators Overtime. And
I remember this.
It was on Rogers, it was on Sportsnet. And I think that type of fun storytelling with the players is what we want to do. So when you talk about like, I think the whole key when you're in sports is you become a fan by falling in love either with a team or a player. Like that's kind of how that's sort of your inroads into becoming a sports fan. And for us, if we can create those moments where you get to feel like you know the player a little bit better, you hear a little bit more about his story, or there's a different side, makes them a little bit more relatable. That's, I think, the way into fandom, because really you don't really don't get to control wins and losses. If you ask anybody, what's the best way to create fans and create a great marketing strategy, it's winning, right? It's like, I think nobody in professional sports would disagree with that. But when you can't control that, what can you control? And I think it's trying to tell some stories, trying to be a little bit more engaging with the fans, trying to be responsive to the fans when they have questions, trying to do just different, whether it's podcasts, radio interviews, things where you're trying to take the temperature of fans and find out what people are thinking.
I'm curious for you. This is something I was thinking about just with the whole mayhem of the playoffs and everything, and Brady Tkachuk kind of surfacing to, it seems like, a little bit of superstardom, just like league wide, with obviously Matthew as well, winning all those cups in Florida. But as someone that's been around this team for a long time, from almost its inception, outside of Alfredsson, like, does Brady Tkachuk have like the highest approval rating among fans that you've seen? Like, is he like the most beloved player since Alfredsson? Because Karlsson obviously was amazing, but I don't know if he reached those heights, and obviously he left in the way he did as well. But I'm just curious for you, what you think about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, but what you got to remember on Alfredsson is he went through a time where he wasn't beloved. Like, there was a window from about, I'll say, certainly in 2006, but maybe even a little bit before that, kind of in the window, I'd say between 2004 and 2006, even early into 2000, that 06-07 season, where people were like not enamored with him. There was a lot of criticism. You got to trade this guy. So it's hard, I think, even if you're Alfredsson, who now in hindsight, he's the GOAT, he's the legend, but it's hard to have your career go from start to finish without some hiccups or some negativity in the marketplace. I think Karlsson, like, I've always thought he played at a higher level than anybody in the history of this franchise. If you're talking about like the individual talent, nobody touched Carl. 2012 Karlsson, early 2013 before the Achilles Karlsson, and then 2016, 17 Karlsson played at a level that I don't think anybody on this franchise ever played at. But he also had some polarizing, tendencies, or the way he played. So Brady's interesting because he hasn't had that sort of that negativity, and that's great. That's a testament to him. I think he's been really good. And I think the only time was, I think, 2 seasons ago.
I remember
the fans were kind of on DJ Smith at the time, but that was him being super defensive of his coach and super defensive of the locker room. And but I really don't think you're right. He's probably as close to being like universally loved as you can get, and that's your captain, right, of a Canadian team, and with it comes a ton of responsibility and a ton of pressure. And this guy's handled it really well. I mean, you chatted with him here recently to kind of launch our season, and like you can ask him about the Olympics, you can ask him about expectations, you can ask him about fantasy football, you can ask him about the dress code, you can and he gives you a really a really thoughtful, genuine answer, right? Like he's a rare athlete who I think is pretty genuine, right? And I think fans appreciate that. Fans appreciate the way that he conducts himself on the ice and off the ice. And I think that's why when you say, is he universally loved? I think the answer is yes.
I'm curious with that, like, what's he like behind the scenes? Like, I mean, I'm around him enough, but I wouldn't say I see him too much behind the scenes outside of in the dressing room, or when we bug you to ask him to come out. What's he like just behind the scenes? Is now that you've gotten to know him, like, have you learned a little bit more about him just being on that side of
big time? And like again, like, and now being on this side of the fence, you're always uncertain of how much you can or want to share, right? Because there's a lot of interactions that happen that are private or whatever. But I'll share one anecdote which I thought probably paints the best picture. And we're in Detroit last year. One of the games we're playing the Red Wings, and I'm in the hallway, kind of going to the bench, and the head of security with the Red Wings comes over to me and goes, like, yeah, you guys really have a great one in your captain there, right? And I'm like, yeah, he's something else. He's like, no. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, I've been at this job. I think you're saying he worked at Joe Louis Arena, like this. He's like been around. He's like, not sure there's a person in professional hockey who's treated me, my staff, better than your captain. He's like, and you need to know that. And I'm telling you, Alex, you go around the league, you talk to the staff that do the hard work, and even with our staff, I'm not sure anybody's ever treated them better than him. And I think really what it is he grew up around this, right? Like he grew up, he remembers his dad playing in St. Louis. He remembers like all that stuff. And I think his dad really set the template of this is how you act. This is how you treat people. And like, I remember even last year we were at Kraft Hockeyville in, where were we? Sudbury. We played in Sudbury. Yep. I'm telling you, this guy signed every autograph that you can imagine. Or even last year when we had our skills event and he couldn't participate, remember he was a little banged up, and he just came out into the hallway and fans were reaching over and it was hilarious in some way. These kids are throwing stuff at Brady, okay? And he actually had to address the crowd. He's like, guys, everyone is going to get something signed, but I'm going to need you to just not throw stuff. We'll go on it. And Alex, he stood there and he probably signed 500 autographs that day.
Oh my God.
But that's just him. And like the version that you see, like I've never seen him say no to an autograph from a kid, never say no to a picture. And I'm not sure that I've seen a guy get asked more than him too. So the guy that you see in public or whatever, that's him. And he's probably even more kind and genuine when he's away from the camera than he is, on it.
I'm curious for you because, maybe peeling back the curtain as much as you can. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but what's Michael Andlauer like? Like I've seen him a couple times and he's really gregarious. Obviously he's your boss. So again, you probably are only going to say positive things, but we'll take that for now. But what do you think he's brought to this organization? Because if you look at like just being behind the scenes a little bit from people they've hired, marketing, everything, like there's been a lot of investment in the team, but also just a very different approach. And it just feels like they're speaking to the fans as an organization. And he talks about Ottawa Gatineau as well. But what's he like behind the scenes? And is it weird kind of knowing a billionaire pretty firsthand?
Yeah. And I've said to him, and I'll say it here, like I have said to him, like, you're too normal to be a billionaire. Like I always think like I think to acquire that amount of, wealth or whatever, like you always think that you have to be a certain way, or like you have to have and I'm sure, like from a business perspective, I'm sure he's as aggressive and, cutthroat as the next person. But boy, he has he has an unbelievable ability to communicate with people and make people in a room feel like, he walks in and the room lights up, and that's just him. And like, I think I was curious after, like, what would it be like working behind the scenes with him? Is he going to be as nice? Is he going to be as friendly? And he is. And he comes into the office and you watch the way he knows a lot of people's names that you would think like, oh, there's no way he knows this person. And sure enough, greets them by name. He knows the security staff. He knows, like, he just knows everybody. And the story I always remember too is people would tell me, so when he used to work at his, he had his transportation logistics business, that one of the things he always did was on a regular basis, he would go down and go hang out at the truck bay in the kind of loading dock of the trucks. And he would just show up with some Timbits and a bunch of coffees, and he would hang out with the drivers. And his rationale for doing that wasn't to just kind of, come across as like an everyday boss. It was to find out what's working on your level, or is there something that's not working on your level, or he does that here too. Like, he comes in and he'll sit down and chat with all sorts of people and make sure, like, hey, is everything working well for you, or like, and really I think that's his value. He's a real people person, and not everybody who's, again, a bit like when you hear the term billionaire, you often think of someone, again, who might be eccentric or, a little aloof or distant, or whatever adjective you want to use. Like if I ask you to describe a billionaire, you're probably not going to say outgoing, friendly, gregarious, family oriented, whatever. Like, but that's him, and that's really the remarkable thing about him, is that he is really a family first type of person.
With that, obviously, there is the arena deal that is pending, but came up. I guess of course, I know that Ian, you're doing everything behind the scenes. You're leading the deal. I'm sure. I'm obviously kidding, but what do you think a downtown arena would do just for the Sens? Like, to me, like, there's been a bit of strife in certain publications about maybe the need of not having a downtown arena, but to me, it seems kind of obvious for the city of Ottawa and like just as a whole, but obviously for you guys as well, just being able to have the wherewithal to have more fans from Gatineau, Orleans, and everything. Like, what do you think? What will the imprint be of a downtown arena whenever and if ever it is built?
Yeah, and like what you want it to be is like transformational for the city, right? Or for Ottawa Gatineau. You don't want it to be just for a certain part of the population, right? Like that's the end goal, is like, what are we doing to make this better for the community? So I think in an ideal world, you build an event center that's like smack downtown, that maybe on top of just, there's 41 and, hopefully, 8 to 10 or whatever playoff games on top of that at home. But like, that still leaves like 300 nights a year. And your hope is, what are we doing on those other 300 nights as an entertainment, as a gathering center, right? And I think if you talk to a lot of people who love music in Ottawa, the feeling is, like the big concerts often skip us over, right? Like they'll go Toronto, Montreal, they skip us over. Like, would a downtown arena help in terms of trying to, attract that? That I think, I would imagine, would be the hope. But what you really want is, I think I look around, Alex, I think about, you can count, I think, on one hand, the number of NHL arenas that are not smack downtown in their city. It's Ottawa, it's Sunrise, Florida, it's where the Hurricanes play, it's where the Anaheim Ducks play. And, again, I'm probably missing one. I guess the Islanders now are a little bit more in a UBS there. But anyway, it's really only a handful. And all of those teams over the years, for one reason or another, have had attendance issues. And I've always thought there's a little bit of connective tissue there. I'm not saying if you're downtown, you're not going to have attendance issues. I'm just saying, isn't it interesting that teams like the Islanders that weren't smack downtown, the Panthers and the Hurricanes and the Ducks and, whatever, there's an element to it. And go around Canada, there's no team that plays in the suburbs. Everybody is smack downtown. And so you want it to be what it's like in Vancouver, or now what you see in Edmonton or Toronto, where you get off public transit and you're at the game. That's what you want, right? You want people arriving to the game in that manner. So I'd like to think that there's a pathway to that happening. I think that's where the excitement lies.
I'm curious for you, like, obviously, as you mentioned at the beginning, if the team's playing well, you're going to drive more fan engagement, more tickets, everything in the latter. How good is this team? I want you to put on your, maybe not, you're obviously a little bit biased now, but a bit of your reporter hat on. Like, yeah. I remember reading you, I think it was 2021, and you were talking about Adam Henrique as like the second line center filler for this team. Things have changed. How good do you think this team can be next season? And how hard of maybe a hurdle will it be to maybe jump that sophomore kind of, struggles that you see a lot of times with teams?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be a really interesting, this is a fascinating division, isn't it? Because I think you've got, you've got the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion. You've got perennial playoff teams in Tampa and Toronto. Montreal obviously took a quantum leap forward. We've been talking about this for years. Buffalo and Detroit are, on the precipice of being a really good programs. Boston had a huge step back, but was that an aberration? Was that a start of a rebuild? Whatever. Like, this could be really interesting. I don't think anybody here wants to just put all sorts of expectations on this team, saying, okay, we're this or we're that. I really think the way I think a lot of people look at last season, probably even, especially if you ask our players, probably, and I'm sure if you ask Steve Stales and Travis Green, like felt like we played better as that Toronto series went on. Yeah. You're almost like we were like that close, right? So the feeling is, I think, hey, what do you do from that last year that you can build upon without trying to put some definitive, flag in the sand or say anything? You never want to do that, right? You never want to be the, we're doing this or whatever. But like, there's a great, and you probably got it when we chatted with Brady there recently. Like, there's probably a real confidence, like a quiet confidence from this group about, what, if we play the way that we can, like, why not us type of thing. And so it's going to be interesting. And I think there is, for sure, like you said, there's some expectations on this program for the first time in a long time, right? Everything was predicated on hope for 6 years, 7 years of, hey, this could be the year. Well, now I think that part shifts, and it's going to be really fascinating to see how it plays out.
What's one guy that you've gone to know a little bit over the past year, like behind the scenes, that kind of has jumped out to you a little bit, that maybe you hope maybe Sens fans get to know a little bit better, or kind of maybe breaks out a little bit, maybe for his personality or anything of the such?
Boy, that's a great, like, the guy I just have so much time for Linus Ullmark as a human being. Like, he is, like, if I could follow this guy around with like a documentary camera, I would. I find him fascinating. I think he thinks on such a different wavelength from most athletes I've ever dealt with. He's got a, just a different way of looking at the world, and it's so fascinating. And he's very reflective, very thoughtful, very sensitive, there's a whole bunch of, I just love talking to him, and I love all of the interactions that I have with him. And so that's the one guy I always think, like, I just wish everybody could see that side of him all the time, because he's just super, super fascinating to me.
I just thought when he got to Ottawa that you were feeding him all these like great quotes like beforehand that he would then list out. Kind of going on that note, like, what do you think the expectation should be for this team? Because, like, in my opinion, it's playoffs or bust, which we've heard a lot in this market. But I think not just making the playoffs, I think they should be eyeing one of the top 3 seeds in the Atlantic. Like, it's a weird division, as you said before. Outside of Florida, I don't really feel any team is that great, but Florida's made the Cup 3 times in a row. They've obviously won it the last 2 years. Like, you're probably not as getting up for as much like the Columbus game in January if you're them, right? So I feel like in the regular season, they're not going to be that same force likely. So, like, I feel like they should be pushing for the division. I don't know. Maybe I'm too much of a homer just being around the team and Sens fans in my life, but I do feel like they have everything you need to kind of go, really take the reins of the Atlantic if they want to.
Well, I think if you look at, like, again, now you're going to try to paint me into a corner so that you have a headline for your first podcast.
They will win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Mendes, Senators will win the Cup. No, I think really, like, I'm going to look at 1 week in particular last year, okay? It was the week leading into the Four Nations break. We had 3 games in the state of Florida, 2, remember, in Tampa, 1 against the Panthers. We lost all 3 games. If you go back, Alex, and if you flip the results of those 3 games, and let's say now you give us 6 points, where are we at in the standings?
You're second.
different conversation, right? So I think everybody understands that it's a razor's edge, and I do think that that's what the group learned that last year, is that, you know, I thought where they were really good, and this is what I think, this was the Travis Green influence, in my opinion. I think they were really good about compartmentalizing, if I can use that term, losses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the past, when this team would lose 3 or 4 in a row, I think there was a feeling of, here we go again. And then you sort of, you know, you end up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think it was a great example was last year, November wasn't the best month. And a lot of if I was a reporter, I would have been doing the same thing. But the narrative is, here we go again. Mm-hmm. And everything turned around in December because I think they were like, we're this is not the same year, not like, so I think the group is a lot more like emotionally mature, if that makes sense. And I think that anything could happen when you're feeling like that type of confidence. So I go back to last year, really close to being right in one of those top 3 spots.
Who's your X factor for the team this year?
Do I get to go back to Linus Ullmark again? No.
Yeah, you get.
That's a great question. Like, I mean, boy, that's a great question.
I can tell you mine if you want.
Yeah. Wait, can I try and guess your
Sure, you can guess.
Factor? He's a forward.
Yes.
Okay. I can tell. No, it's not going to be, because I've got it narrowed down to 3 guys.
Okay, you can list them all.
Mind of Alex Adams. And I've got it nailed down to Pinto, Cousins, or Greg.
What was the third one? You said Pinto and Greg and
Cousins.
Cousins is my guy. I wrote that yesterday.
Cousins, right?
Yeah.
See?
I just think it's because if he's really good, I don't know how this team is bad. To me, unless everyone gets injured, which sometimes that happens, but unless it's an injury-plagued year, if Dylan Cousins is close to 30 goals, I think this team's going to go really deep. So, and be a force in the Atlantic. So that's mine. So, do you now have a better idea of your X factor, Ian?
Boy, well, can I just copy you?
Just do that every time.
Yeah. No, but like, gosh, it's a really good question. Like, you know, putting my old reporter hat on again, like, you know what? I don't know if it's an X factor so much as I'm just super curious, is Jordan Spence. Like, I'm really curious. Like, I think, like, low key, it was a super savvy pickup, like kind of a need, like, get a right shot D that can, like, I think my sense on him was always, the guy can move the puck, right? You get a guy who can move the puck. He's a right shot D. I'm gonna go with him. Like, just out of curiosity, like who's his partner? How much does he play? All that stuff. And maybe that's a lazy answer, but
okay. Well, I like it. I think I'd love to see him with Sanderson. That's if I can kind of whisper in Travis Green's ear, which I know he would never let me do. I would like to see those 2 together. Before I let you go, Ian, and thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. I have a little trivia for you because some of you may not know, but Ian is the trivia savant, the guru. When I started covering the Sens, he would always be the quiz master. So I thought I would kind of reverse the rules for this one. And I have 3 questions for you. So they're not too difficult. They're all related to last season. So I thought it would be fair. So the first one
all related to last season.
Yeah. Just because, I don't know, if I go too deep, I know I won't know them, but you will. So I think that would have been problematic. So to last season, who led the Senators in plus minus?
Plus minus last season was wait, hold on. Shabbat and Jensen were like neck and neck. I'm going to go Jensen, but I don't know. I'm going to say Jensen, but I feel like it was Shabbat. Was it Jensen?
You're right. Yep, you got it. It's like every time you're like almost on the fringe of getting it wrong, but you're always right, Ian. Okay. This is a good one. Outside of Brady Tkachuk, who is always and it's a kind of complicated question, so I you can be fallible on this one. But outside of Brady Tkachuk, who was second on the team in penalty minutes last season?
I'm going the Riddler.
You're very close. It's a confusing question because the problem is that so you are right and wrong. Dylan Cousins had more cumulative. Dylan Cousins had more cumulative penalty minutes last year, but Ridley Gregg had the most, which is really, what's crazy is Tim Stutz was 4 on that list. Isn't that weird?
Timmy was 3rd. I just remember Ridley having some penalty minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last one is who led the team in game-winning goals last year? There's 2 answers for this, both tied at 5 goals.
Tied at 5 goals. Well, Brady had so many overtime goals, so it's got to be he had at least 4. Brady's got to be 1.
Yeah, he's 1. He's 5. Yeah, I think he had 4 overtime goals.
And there's one other guy tied with him.
Yeah. You might have mentioned his name already in this podcast.
Pinto.
Correct. Yep, you got it. You're so good at this.
How many did Josh Norris have before last year? Norris had remember there was the Boston game, a Detroit game.
Shoot! It's because
he scored a bunch of late. Do you remember this? He scored against
Detroit,
Boston. He had an overtime goal.
I used your own website, Ian, and they don't have Josh Norris on it, so I would have to backtrack and find out. But I think you're right because he had the Detroit game,
the Boston game. Remember, there was a last-second goal. There was another game he scored, I think, in overtime. I was debating between
Kings. Yeah, he scored against the Kings
8-7 game there, right?
Yeah. Now I'm Googling this as we speak, but I will figure that out. Anyways, Ian, the guru himself at trivia, the knower of all things Ottawa Senators, and now works for the Ottawa Senators. Who would have thought? It kind of seems like a match made in heaven. Thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. I really, really appreciate it, and I'll see you probably later next week. But thanks for kicking off this podcast and joining, and we really appreciate it.
If your pun game was on, you would have said it's a match made in Cleven, but you weren't.
Ian, I still tell people that you once were in the Senators locker room, and I forget what it was. I think Claire was asking guys about their siblings, and without a moment's notice, you said Zublings. And I will always remember a Zubline. And I think Artem Zub was 3 meters away. I don't think he overheard us because it probably sounded like a mix of English and Russian or something, just the way you said it, but it was pretty good. So your pun game is always on, and thanks again for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, and good luck with this new podcast. It's always great having more coverage of the team, and this is just another platform for you. So looking forward to seeing all your work in the year ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.